You're on, buddy.
I'm going to start with a story and then 3 prayers. The story that I want to tell you is about the Dalai Lama. And for me, the Dalai Lama is a supreme example of everything that we're talking about and aspiring to. Here is someone who is alive in enlightened knowledge and love. Here is someone who has been pouring his entire life out in service of others. And here is someone who has been absolutely calmly fearless and sometimes very ferocious in telling the truth to the world about where we are and what we need to become to be able to be strong enough and empowered enough and lucid enough and passionate enough and compassionate enough and brave enough to come together to recreate the world in the image of truth. He has lived a complete transfigured life in the center of our madness. And he's still here, thank God. And the last information I had about him from a friend of ours is that he's now planning to live to be 103. So let's hope he does. I had the honor of interviewing him in Oslo on the morning that he won the Nobel Prize. So I was sitting in this very austere, very Norwegian white room in a grand hotel where he was staying, alone with him and his brother, who was translating for him when he couldn't find the English words. And we had 2 hours together that morning. And I'd met him many times, but that morning was, of course, the high point of everything you can possibly imagine, because to be with him on that morning in 1989, when the world was giving the Nobel Peace Prize to an enlightened being, was a very holy and extraordinary experience, and one that was filling everybody who was there with ecstasy. We all were roaming the streets of Oslo as if drunk on celestial wine. It was absolutely amazing. Same year as the Berlin Wall fell. And at the end of the interview, I was so overwhelmed by the immensity of the love that surrounds him, that is his atmosphere, that I couldn't get out of my chair. And he'd said, well, I think we have to stop the interview now because I have to go and get the Nobel Prize. I thought, well, that's allowed. And he saw that I couldn't move from my chair. And he came over to me and he said, Andrew, come on. And he grabbed my hands and I found myself breast to breast, body to body with His Holiness. And I was, what was I, 37 at the time. So I had the chutzpah of a young man, and I looked up into his eyes that were smiling. And I said, okay, we'll never be in this position together again. What is the meaning of life? I thought I'd better get into it with someone who knew. And he roared with laughter, that fabulous, all-transforming laughter that is one of his greatest gifts to the world. And one day I'm going to realize my ambition of issuing a CD. One half will be the Dalai Lama laughing to give us all courage, and the other half will be my cat Jade purring, because she has a very loud purr. So those 2 glorious sounds of fulfillment and happiness will be available to everybody in their dark night to give them the guts to go through all of this. But when he'd finished roaring with laughter, he stepped back and he looked at me very concentratedly and very grandly and majestically and seriously. And he said, the meaning of life is to embody the transcendent. Can you get that into yourselves? The meaning of life is to embody the transcendent. It's not just to have experiences of the transcendent sitting on your futon. It's not just to read beautiful mystical texts about oneness and get the odd glimpse. That's wonderful. That's just a beginning. The meaning of life is to embody the transcendent. And what does that mean? What does that mean? And I'll tell you after I tell you the rest of the story. As he brought his hands down, I felt this golden light pierce my head and race up and down my body and fill me with this glorious, holy, beautiful energy. And if I had been stricken by his presence before, I was now rendered completely gaga, unable to move. And again, he laughed. And then he leant forward to me and he said, give me your hand. You see the door over there? You and I are going, he spoke to me like a mother would speak to a 4-year-old so sweetly. He said, you and I are going to walk to that door. And we walked incredibly slowly to the door with him holding my hand and caressing my hand so tenderly. And when we got to the door, he looked at me and very slowly withdrew his hand. And he said, goodbye, my son. Goodbye. Goodbye. And I staggered down this corridor, which I remember had the most disgusting carpet, dirty golden carpet, dreadful. And when I was down the corridor, I turned and I saw that he was still standing there. And he was radiating golden light. And the only thing I could see was his face smiling, just loving. Totally. He had given me not just the meaning of life, but how you enact that meaning in the exquisite attention and concern and tender compassion that he lavished on me. And in that standing there on the most important day of his earthly life, paying total attention to this crazy young Englishman whom he had just illumined. Embodying the transcendent means the following. It means plunging with your whole passion into the most rigorous possible mystical discipline so that your mind can become the servant of enlightened intelligence. so that your heart can be broken, and broken so wide open that it holds the entire experience of the cosmos in its vast embrace, all the ecstasy and all the agony contained in a vast peace. And it means bringing that power of radical knowledge of oneness with the one that you've been given through practice, not merely down into your mind, not merely down into your heart, but into the depths of your body, so your whole body becomes compassion's body, hope's body, love's body, wisdom's body. And it means enacting that unified force field of wisdom and compassion, peace and passion in inspired works of justice and compassion. That is what embodying the transcendent means. It is a complete revolution of our entire way of being and doing everything. And the transcendent is both extremely peaceful, utterly peaceful, and absolutely dynamic, because it's out of that great peaceful power that is emanated the mother force that creates the entire universe, all of the universes, always. And is all the processes in all of the universes, and all of the beings in all of the universes, and all of the interactions, and all of the evolutionary interactions. That is what oneness means. Oneness means coming into the unified force field of the one, grounding your entire being in fathomless rock-like peace, and acting from divine inspired passion, creative, evolutionary, wise, focused passion in reality, to engender a wholly new way of being on every level, in every realm, in every institution, in every political system, in every economic system, in every way we see and think of reality. And that's why those who embody the transcendent are the true revolutionaries. They are the ones who are given by their quest and by grace the capacity, the strength, the wisdom, the guidance to live an undivided life and express that undivided life in acts of monumental integrity and divinely blessed force in reality. That is the real meaning of the vision of the Bodhisattva that is being enacted by the Dalai Lama, the great ideal at the core of Mahayana Buddhism, the being who comes back again and again and again and again and again, life after life after life after life, and has made the vow that they will never leave until every blade of grass, every animal, every human being, everything has attained liberation. Imagine making a vow like that. I have made that vow. I made it with a Buddha in Ladakh when I was 29. And he said, before we made this vow, be careful. Be careful when you make this vow, because this vow will bind you and you will be compelled to enact its burning, endless compassion in action until every being has been liberated. And this is to the meaning of the Christ consciousness, which is not simply a beautiful, holy, wild, gorgeous experience of the living kingdom, the living sacred power of reality. It's becoming one with that sacred power to be its servant of transformation in the world. Jesus, after his baptism, when he was declared the Son of God, didn't sit on a futon. He didn't retreat to some villa by the Sea of Galilee. He didn't ring up one of his rich women friends and say, could you please give me a whole one of your estates so I could spend the rest of my life having this glorious experience. The first thing he did, he went into the desert and confronted the darkness in himself and overcame it. And then the second thing he did, he came down to Nazareth and he gave the most astounding sermon about the liberation of the poor, the challenging of all the structures of his world, the announcement of a new world. And you know what happened to him? They tried to kill him that first speech. They gave him the ultimate compliment. They knew he was really dangerous, because instead of being like all the other holy geezers around, reading their Torahs and dressing up and putting on their lovely costumes and talking to people who didn't want to do anything about anything and just keeping people in the soup of a fake holiness, Jesus knew that he'd been given his extraordinary realization to use it to become someone at the center of a world lacerated by injustice and burning with cruelty and suffering under a terrifying empire that was degrading the dignity of everybody. He knew that he'd been given it to turn up and proclaim, not just by his words, but with his actions, a wholly new reality. And he knew, after that first experience of what happened when he gave that speech announcing the good news that terrified all the ones who keep smug and satisfied in the old world, he knew that his days on the earth were numbered and that they would get him, because he wasn't playing patter cake with the structures of cold evil. He wasn't saying it's all illusion. He recognized the horror of what was happening, and he met it not with hatred, but with a marriage of divine, beautiful, visionary, miraculous healing power and absolutely clear, naked, divine ferocity that called everybody to account and challenged everyone to get real and get going about really being embodied transcendent love in action. That's the truth, whether it is enacted by Jesus or the prophet, peace be upon him, or by Isaiah and Jeremiah, peace be upon them, or by Jane Goodall, who at 83 is catching planes in the middle of the night to go out tirelessly all over the world, begging humanity with her noble sweetness to wake up and stop the murder of the animals. That's the real life. And that life is agonizing and glorious. It's filled with difficulty and defeats and derisions, and it annoys the hell out of people who want their God in lemonade form rather than the real vodka, but it gives you so much joy and energy, as anyone who's ever spent 15 minutes with Jane knows. And Jane and I have met each other at airports all over the world at 2 o'clock in the morning, looking for our luggage and laughing at the crazy lives love has forced us to lead. So let's hear the 3 prayers, shall we? Let's hear what it really means to embody transcendence before I talk to you about sacred activism, the birthing force of the new humanity. There is a birth trying to take place. The mother's doing everything she can to wake us up. She's organized a global dark night to bitch slap the hell out of the human ego, to burn away all of its illusions of fantasy, to try and shatter our hearts open to the heartbreak and injustice and cruelty and madness of what we're doing. She's doing her part. She's also bringing in a wholly new glorious power of light to divinize us. She's doing that as well. But what more can she do if you and I don't collaborate with her, collaborate with her? If we don't wake up and realize that the real mystical path isn't about peace of mind and being happy and manifesting Malibu mansions and Cuban houseboys and all the dreary narcissistic fantasy of the new age. The real mystical path is about risking the most dangerous and beautiful and holy life of all, which is the life of embodied transcendence, oneness in heart, mind, soul, and body, and will and action. That's the real life. And the rest is fantasy. So don't get stuck in the soapy, sentimental, vague, boring, bland versions of the real mystical path. Listen to the great ones, and they will all tell you what I, who am not worthy to wash their underpants, are telling you right now. And you know this, because a message like this simultaneously thrills you and scares you. And that's when you know a message is real, when it's thrilling and scary at the same time. That's when you know God is up to something. It's how you know God is up to something in your personal life, and it's how you know God is up to something in the life of the world. So let's all try to get with the program, because the future of the planet now depends on that. So you can tell I'm getting excited because it's exciting. It's exciting when you wake up out of your slumber and realize, oh my God, I really am a divine human being. And being a divine human being means taking up the burden of being a voice for the voiceless and an agent of justice in the world. That's what it means. So I thought we'd begin by a prayer of Rumi, one of my favorites. And it really does give the first instruction about how you turn up, which is that you allow yourself to burn with passion for God. That's the first. If you can't burn with passion for God, you might as well go and lie down under a friendly truck. You're never going to be transformed. So, oh my God, be satisfied with your lovers. May the death into life of lovers be holy. May your beauty be a feast for them. May their souls burn like incense in your fire. Oh, beloved, you have spilled our blood with your own hand. May that same hand also bloody our soul. May anyone who says, save him from love, have his prayer chased from heaven. On the path of love, the moon dwindles and disappears. May this dwindling from love become a fullness. Others demand a respite from the dying of the dark night, but lovers cry out, no, let it come fast. Heaven is made of the smoke of hearts that burn away. Blessed are those who are burnt away. So the first prayer is about passionate devotion and adoration to the One, so that you can get far outside your little comfortable spiritual practice and start turning up in the fullness of your beauty before the great beauty and crying out to it to be transformed by its grace into a living flame of its fire. And now for Kabir. And this is a poem about the engoldenment transfiguration process that happens to those who are burnt away. When union starts to be your experience, the light comes in as it does with bead, and it starts to make you over in its living image. And you go on a journey which is very hard to describe, but which Kabir has described more gloriously than anyone, in which your mind and your heart and your soul and your body are engolden, and you are truly born as a nuclear reactor of justice and compassion, an unstoppable force, a Christ force, a Buddha force. And here is Kabir. Let there be your love, beloved, burning softly in every cell of my dying and transfigured body. By your wild and merciful grace, O Creator of truth, turn me to gold so I can love in perfect fullness you who love in me. Kabir didn't spend his life wandering around Benares being blissed out. Kabir, like Jesus, annoyed the hell out of everybody. The Hindus tried to kill him because he said that they were full of it because of the caste system and because of their endless greed. The Muslims wanted to kill him because he absolutely raged gloriously against their killing of the animals, because he knew he'd woken up, he saw that animals were sacred. And both wanted to kill him because he said to people, religions are crazy. You can have a direct connection with the divine, far beyond dogma, far beyond religion. Get with that. You'll go much faster. Love will teach you directly, and you'll be transfigured, and you'll be your own divine presence, living your own life of compassion and action beyond the reach of any kind of control. You can imagine how popular that made him. And the only reason they didn't get at him and they couldn't kill him was because he was the greatest poet in the world. And hundreds of thousands of people were singing his poems because he would sit outside his house as a weaver. He never made money. He wasn't concerned to be Mr. Fabulous and sell himself. He was God's assassin. And he burned with love, and he sang, and the songs went out to the boatmen and the washerwomen and the cigarette sellers and the prostitutes, the real people. And they heard in that voice the voice of God loving them. And they protected him because they'd had enough of the boys' club. And they could see that this man was God in human shape, and he treated them with such beauty and tenderness and respect and humility and majesty. And now I want to read you a prayer that Andrew Harvey wrote. I don't know how I have the chutzpah to write a prayer and read it after those two, but I know they forgive me. So this is my prayer, and it's my prayer for you, and it's a prayer for all of us to get real now and stop imagining that we're on the spiritual path when we're still doing far too little to turn up to try and prevent the structures of cold evil destroying this planet. So here's the prayer. Oh, beloved, do not let me pray for the poor without working tirelessly to end the systems that thrive on poverty. Do not let me pray for the animals without working to end the systems that are slaughtering them. Do not let me pray for justice and compassion and the coming of your glorious kingdom without being willing to give up my life to make them real. Save me from the subtle and lethal hypocrisy that would make me believe I love you when I risk nothing to make this love real in the world. Yeah. That's reality. That's how fierce love is. Love is not only sweetness. Love is massive demand that we become real. Really see the real horror of the real world heading headlong to annihilation, really see the prospect of an unimaginable birth, really get that that birth won't just be handed to us, that we're going to have to turn up and build it in every cell of our brains and hearts and minds, and really see that we can't sit around waiting for other people to turn these terrible things around. We have to go trembling and shaking, but with real courage, finally, into radical, wise, urgent, sacredly inspired action. Otherwise, there will be no world. I went through an atrocious 10-year dark night, so I know what the dark night is like. And I know too that the reason why I was put through that appalling dark night was so that I could understand at the most visceral, bloody, broken level what the world is now going through and going to go through. And I understand too, from where I am now, is that I am on the other side of that dark night and what that dark night gave me, which was something that only the dark night can give you, which is a vastly expanded consciousness a vastly increased energy, a vastly empowered passion, and an absolute relentless intensity of focus on what needs to be done. That's the great gift of a real dark night. And when I was going through the dark night, which happened after B died, and happened because the guru that I was worshiping as the Divine Mother said to me, you cannot be homosexual and you cannot marry the man that you love, and then lied that she'd said it, plunging my life for 3 years into boiling chaos in which I had death threats and bombs thrown through my window, in which my husband nearly died of cancer, while people who were supposedly spiritual were ringing us up and saying, I hope he dies, he's disgusting, you're disgusting. You cannot imagine what we lived through. The horror of it is far beyond any of my capacity to describe to you. But during that truly atrocious, flaying, searing, savage, cruel time when all the masks on all the gurus and all the so-called holy people and all my fantasies and all my illusions were just ripped off by the talons of the goddess, so that I was facing reality naked, without anywhere to hide, with no money, with my husband dying, with people who'd said I was the best thing since sliced bread, calling me a liar. What I learned was that I was never closer to God than in that dereliction. And there were multiple miracles that happened every day. The icons of Mary in my house wept tears of rose, the house filled with the fragrance of the mother. The black wild powers that were sent against them, and I could see them and experience them, they were diverted by people who were also working with me in the most astounding ways. In fact, in one amazing moment, the person who was working with me from Europe, who was trained by Padre Pio, and who Padre Pio had given some of his deep charism to, she used to ring me every morning and saying, do not pick out the phone at 11:15 because X, Y, and Z, she didn't know the names, but she'd received the names, are going to ring you because they want to get you to a place where they're going to kill you. So don't go. And one day she rang up and she said, the forces against your survival are now so great that you must prepare for death. You'll be fine, but you will die. And I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go to Greece to visit an old man who happens to be the major exorcist of the Greek Orthodox Church. He's in his 90s, and I'm going to do something with him to try and prevent this happening, but I don't know whether we can get through this. And I prepared with my husband, we prepared to die, and we said our prayers, and we just gave ourselves over to the Divine Mother. And then in the morning, we hadn't died, and she rang and she said, I was in the room in his cave, and this horrific force manifested, and then the Virgin herself manifested in the middle of this force and said, this boy, these boys are under my protection. They will be saved and protected. And that was the moment that I knew that I would survive, but it got to that place. So I know what a dark night is. And I know the chaos, the agony, the terror, the unspeakable confrontation with real evil that happens in a dark night. And if you can't see it in the world at this moment, when we had thugs attack the Capitol incited by the president, when we have billionaires making billions while people are starving and nobody doing anything about it, when we have the climate collapsing and they're still chattering, when will you see it? Of course you can see it. It's just allowing yourself to see it and allowing yourself to feel it and allowing the fangs of that reality to bite deep into your neck so you shake with pain and begin to realize that you have to go fabulously deeper to arise fabulously stronger and wilder and holier to actually do something about it with what you are and what you have. And we live in this culture where there is a whole spiritual world so drunk on a stupid, sentimental, narcissistic vision of spirituality that it's all about me, what I can manifest, what I can be, my peace of mind. Damn your peace of mind. What about the people who are starving? What about the animals who are dying? What about those who are the widows that are being burned to death in India? What about the farmers who've just had this dreadful policy instituted, which means that they'll starve next year? What about them? What about the people in Myanmar who are being shot at in the streets, who don't have a single weapon, but who are going out there fighting for their democracy and their right to live a decent life? What about them? Real peace of mind doesn't come from defending yourself against the agony of the world. Real peace of mind comes from practice. I am peaceful, which is why I can be this passionate. So don't hide in that kind of garbage. It's a cesspit of folly and narcissism. It has nothing to do with the reality of where we are, nor with the grandeur of who we can be when we get real and do the work to embody the transcendent. So, when I was in my dark night, and I think I better have a cup of coffee because it's time to take a breath, but I'm really passionate about getting this over to you because you're such lovely people. And all you need is to set yourself aflame. That's all. You just need to pour the oil of love over yourselves and then light the match of truth and see what happens. What will happen is that you'll start doing unbelievable things and having much more joy and much deeper peace of mind than anything that denial or staying comfortable in your comfort zone would ever give you. That's what will happen. When I was in my dark night, I was reading the great texts of the dark night because I needed a map. And in all of them, they said that towards the end, the protection and the illuminations would get much larger. You'd suddenly realize, oh, you're not dying, you're being born into a wholly new reality. And in the classic texts, and this is true of Hinduism, this is true of Sufism, this is true of the Christians, they say that the dark night ends, and this is so amazing, with a vision of your heart's soul's beloved. And it doesn't matter which religion you belong to, because God is not religious, in case you hadn't noticed. All the religions are just different forms of cuisine. The mother cooks the food in different ways for different kinds of temperaments. And I knew this. I got this piece of information, but I was waiting. And it went on and on and on and on and on and on until I had really thought, I'm going to die before this bloody thing ends. Well, I got a telegram from my mother. And my mother was a woman of great intensity and overwhelming will. She could teach ravens to fly underwater. You never disobeyed my mother. And she sent me a telegram from India. And she said, your father is dying. And I want you to come immediately. So I got on a plane. I was living in San Francisco. And I turned up in the place where I was born, Coimbatore in South India. And my beloved father was in fact dying. And I adored my father. We were very different. He was a head of police. He was very grand and calm and conservative, but he loved me very deeply and I loved him very deeply. And I spent that week with him, just being with him as he was going through this unspeakably difficult and painful process, but so loving being with him, because all the barriers that had ever been between us, they were all burnt away, and there was just overwhelming love on both sides. And on the Sunday, I went to church in a church that I'd been a page boy at when I was 7, dressed in white satin. And I had made a hell of a mess of myself, because just before the wedding ceremony of my aunt and her dreadful husband, whom I never could stand even at that age, I slid down the red banisters of my grandparents' home with my white satin suit. So I had to stand with my back to the altar throughout the ceremony, in case people saw that the whole back of the white satin suit that I had on was actually stained with red from the banisters. So I remember this church. And it was the Church of Christ the King. And it was the day of the feast of Christ the King. And I went, as you can imagine, flayed from having been with my father. There's few things in life for someone more flaying, more exposing, more vulnerabilizing in the best and holiest sense than being with someone, especially your parents, and for a man, your father, in certain deep ways, in that kind of exposure. So I went to that church unbelievably fragile and unbelievably grateful. And the most extraordinary experience then was Graced Me, which began the whole movement of sacred activism, the global movement. And this is what happened. The sermon followed the reading of Jesus's greatest teaching in many ways. The reading of Matthew 25, in which Jesus says, "You who have visited the sick, you who have visited those in prison, those who've been generous, you have been visiting me, because I am that, and you will be with me always." And as I heard that sermon for the first time, I got the extraordinary, revolutionary beauty of what Jesus was saying. And this little plump Indian priest came out and gave a sermon on the epistle. And he said, Jesus is a mystical king of reality, not because of the miracles. Other people have done miracles. Jesus is Jesus because he gave everything out of an overwhelming passion of love to the world. He gave everything. And his words just went through me like a spear. And I got why, that although I have loved deeply all the great teachers of humanity, I've been initiated into Sufism, I've been initiated into Mahayana Buddhism, I had a Hindu master, I've studied with the Aborigines, I've dived deep into the Kabbalah. At the end of the night, my beloved is him, because he is the wildest and the bravest and the most in your face of all of them. He wasn't content just to give a path to oneness in consciousness. He was bringing in the revolution of divine love in action from embodied transcendence. That's a very different path and much more dangerous and beautiful. And that's why I love him. And I hope to be worthy of that love. And when the priest sat down, I looked up at the hokey, cheesy statue of the resurrected Christ at the end of the church. And it came alive. He was standing there for 20 minutes. It was alive. And I was staring at it and at him, and he was staring at me. And I saw from the heart of the statue this flood of violent, gorgeous, golden lava fire erupt like a concentrated volcano. And it came towards me across the church and seemed to seize a dagger, and it stabbed my heart so intensely that I thought I was going to die. It was, for a moment, totally agonizing. And then bliss. And my heart opened, and an answering river of golden fire broke out from my heart, melted with that fire, and there was fire, 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 fire. Lover, beloved, and love were one burning ecstasy. I was standing next to my brother, who's a multi-millionaire who never gives anything to anybody. And so I didn't think I should tell him that the crucified, the resurrected Christ has come alive, and I'm being violated in the most glorious way by divine light. That would not have sat well with my brother. So I decided to leave the church just to begin to integrate. I haven't integrated it yet. You never integrate seeing the beloved. It changes everything. And it was the end of my night. I knew that that was the end. It had happened. I had seen the image of who I was meant to be reformed into. That's what the vision means. You've given the image of the kind of being that you're being called to try and become in your own unique way. And I went outside and I saw a 23 or 24-year-old young man with no arms and no legs, in filthy rags, derelict and lonely beyond imagining, who'd been dumped in this filthy turd-filled puddle outside the church, God knows by who, and was just there, helpless, lonely beyond words, desolate, and so beautiful, so stricken and so beautiful. And my heart exploded again, and I went up to him and I held him in my arms, and I summoned people and I gave them money, and I organized for him to be taken away and put into a shelter because I had some money and there were people around. But as I did that, I heard a voice, and it's the only time in my life I've heard a voice. I am not somebody who hears voices. I see the light and I receive dreams, but voices don't come. But this one was the voice for my life and the mission that I have. And it was the voice of the One. And the One was furious with me. And this is what the One said. The One said, you have been playing with the light. You've had all these amazing mystical experiences. You've met the greatest teachers on the planet. You've been educated by masters in the major traditions. And you've written books that have made you famous about your experiences. So people think you are something. You're nothing. You're absolutely nothing, because You haven't realized one thing. When you look into the eyes of this man, you're not just looking into the eyes of one man, you're looking into the eyes of someone who represents the 2 billion people who are living less than $1 a day. And if you look deeper into his eyes, you'll see the forests burning. You'll see the seas polluted. You'll see the fish dying. You see the animals being murdered. You'll see the women being raped. You'll see the trans people being beaten. You'll see the gay people being treated like garbage. Who are you to play with the light and not become so infused by the light's courage and passion that you won't spend the whole of the rest of your life trying to stop the burning of the world, the killing? And the voice went on. It was terrifying. Don't tell me that love is sweet. When love comes in its majesty, it has a sword of light, and it hacks your fantasies and illusions down because it has to release you. And that's what the Christ was doing. He loved me enough to kill me twice. First by glory, second by truth. And he said, that said, she said, because the Christ is male, female, nothing. It's all the whole full power of love. Love said, when you cross over the waters of death, you won't be asked, did you get to the 16th rung of emptiness? Did you really know what non-duality meant? Did you have lots of wonderful experiences? Did you win the Nobel Prize for your stunning literary masterpieces? Love will only ask you one question. And this question has burnt itself into my brain and heart and body. It will ask you this question. What did you do while the world was burning? What did you love enough to risk your comfort and your vision of yourself and your reputation? What did you love enough to be able to be strong enough to stand up and do to help? That's the only question you will be asked. And that was the birth of sacred activism. In that moment, I knew what I had to do with the rest of my life. And that's what began the global movement of sacred activism. I had been irradiated and annihilated to be remade, as we will be if we go through this birthing process. And in each of our cases, what will appear in us is our mission, what we have been uniquely created to do from our true, authentic, divine human oneness with the One. That's what happens. You're conscripted into the love army of warrior midwives, the ones who have to turn up because they've seen the agony that love is in at what we are doing to love, and to love's children, and love's trees, and love's animals, and love's seas, and love's souls, and love's minds, and love's hearts. Am I getting through to you? There's nothing more I can do except pour napalm on myself and set myself alight. That I could do, but I've tried that in the past and it didn't work either. All I can just do is pray that something is really resonating. And it's not your fault that you've been brought up in a culture which is so shut down and so narcotized and so broken down by fake mysticism, and also by the most appalling example of the Christian churches, who have, in the fundamentalists, actually celebrated a psychopath as the instrument of God. QAnon tells us that the unmentionable one, whose name I will not say, is Jesus returned. That's demonic craziness. But that's where we are. I went back to America, and you can imagine that was a defining moment, shall we say. It was a defining moment to see the Christ and be told the truth. And I meditated I was working and writing, but I was meditating on that experience. And then one night, I asked the beloved, I said, please give me a vision of what this force that I experienced in the church really is. What is that electrifying golden passion, lava force? What is it? I'm somebody, I was trained at Oxford. I have a very, very lucid intellect, and it has been honed over years, and I've kept it sharp because I want to use it as a sword in love's hand. And I really wanted to know, because the more you can know from an illumined perspective, the more you can help other people to know. And I really prayed to be given a true insight into what this radical, revolutionary, transfiguring force was. I knew it was love, but what was it made of? And after a week of this praying, I was living in Las Vegas. So it shows that visions can happen anywhere, kids. I was living in a White House in the desert, looking at the maddest place on earth. But at least Las Vegas doesn't lie about itself being a fake. Everything else is pretending to be genuine. Las Vegas admits that it's a complete fake, which is why I shall always love it. Honesty at last, right? And that night, when it was my destiny to receive this vision, I saw something so amazing. And I want to share it with you, because this is the force of the birth, my darlings. This is the birthing force of the mother that could, if we aligned ourselves, birth an absolutely extraordinary new world. And what I saw was a desert and two rivers of fire coming from different sides of the desert, racing across the desert. And as they were racing, I heard these words in my mind. I heard the words, one river of fire is the passion of the mystic for God. And the other river of fire is the passion of the activist for justice. And these are the two noblest fires in the human soul. Wow, there they were, the passion from God and the passion for justice. And you know what happened? They met on the horizon, and there was a nuclear explosion. And it wasn't a destructive explosion. It was an explosion of all imaginable lights, purples and greens and reds. This vast force was born. And I heard the words, when the two fires come together, a third fire of love in action is born. And when this fire is discovered, enacted, embodied, and unleashed, a new world will be born. I woke up and I remembered two things that I had loved so deeply and cherished. I remembered Teilhard de Chardin's extraordinary words when he says, someday after we have harnessed the tides of gravity, we shall harness the energies of love. And then, for the second time in history, humanity will have discovered fire. I'd seen that new fire. And then I also heard 5 of my favorite lines of Rumi. Rumi, who was that fire, who lived that fire, who spoke that fire, who burned with that fire, who gave us 3,000 odes electrified by that fire, right? He has these extraordinary lines in the Mathnavi, his mystical epic, when he just kicks away the stool and gives it to us straight. And he says, passion burns down every branch of exhaustion. Passion is the supreme elixir and renews all things. So don't sigh heavily, your brow bleak with cynicism and boredom. Go for passion, 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 passion. He repeats it 5 times. And he doesn't mean emotional passion. He means divine passion that is like a flame that is feeding off the divine peace. The divine peace is the wax and the flame is passion, and the passion is grounded and it's not neurotic. It's Shakti. And the last 2 lines are the last 2 lines that I put in the front of the Hope, which started the global movement of sacred activism. And it says, run far away, my friends, from all false solutions. Let divine passion triumph and rebirth you in yourself. Let divine passion triumph and rebirth you in yourself. The whole function of this dark night is to burn us down so that we finally can catch flame from divine passion and put it into radical, all-transforming action. That's what happens in a real dark night. To the great mystics who've been through it, and that's what she is offering us. So what is sacred activism? What do you think? What do you think now? What do you feel now? Sacred activism is the holy force that's born when you bring together the deepest spirituality and understanding of oneness with wisely guided, non-violent, but extremely focused and urgent action. And at a deeper level, and this is where it gets truly thrilling, sacred activism is one of the ways in which we participate with this great evolutionary birth that's trying to take place, which is the birth of us as undivided, embodied, transcendent human beings. Because when we put our deepest sacred passion into action, we bring together in ourselves heart, mind, soul, and body. We unify ourselves. And that helps the Divine Mother birth us ever more richly and deeply into the splendor that we are destined for of the undivided life. Heart, mind, soul, and body, aflame with peace and passion and purpose in the unified field of reality. That's why sacred activism is one huge flame of this great fire of evolutionary transformation. So I've given you the vision as I received it. And I have spent 20 years giving this all over the world. And I wrote the book, The Hope. And if you go to my website, you can sign up and you get a free 9-hour reading of it. So you can, and I read it calmly. So I don't do this on my reading, but I'm trying to communicate something to you because God, you're going to need it. Oh my God. What I saw in Arunachala, you have no idea what's coming. This is nothing compared to what's down the pike. The next 10 years are going to change the world, either to destroy it or to remake it. It's going to become overwhelmingly intense on every level. The dance is just starting, friends. Get strong now. So let me just, in the last 15 minutes, just give you a way of grounding this and putting this into practice and claiming your own path to becoming a sacred activist, to embodying in your own way, with your own personalities, resources, your sacred activism. If you think of that great new force as a flaming sun, you can imagine that there are 5 great flames made of the substance of that fire coming out of that sun. So just picture that if you want. And if you don't, as the Dalai Lama said, after giving the most astounding display of magical truth he said, if you like this, take it to heart. If you don't like it, don't worry. But I'm not quite as sweet as the Dalai Lama, actually, not yet. Perhaps that's coming in my 70s. But what those 5 flames are the 5 kinds of service that you can do right now if you really want to. Start making yourself strong enough to start being a witness of justice and compassion in the world, really getting out of your comfort zone and really putting love into action. And the first service is to the divine, by whatever name you know the divine. It doesn't matter what you call the divine, whether you call it mother, father, or one. None of the words matter. What matters is that you turn up in praise, in gratitude, in devotion, in adoration, and in practice. And when you do that service with your full being, you'll find that something amazing will happen, is that you will be guided to the books, you'll be guided to the people, you'll be guided to the teachers that you need to really reinforce and expand your realization, because the divine is longing for you to turn up in that passionate service so that it can flood you with the graces that you need. But don't believe me, just try it and you'll see that it will happen. And all of your truth will be woken up. Your inner guru will start guiding you, woken up by the great guru of life, the one. The second kind of service is the service to yourself, but not in this dithering narcissistic way that the new age goes on about, oh, I've got to have self-care and all that. My God, these are upper middle class people talking about self-care. Are you kidding me? When the African-American women who can't afford anything are going to work, risking their lives to be nurses and bus drivers and all the rest of it. God damn it, wake up. It's about training, my friends. The service to yourself is making yourself strong enough, beautiful enough, noble enough, powerful enough, passionate enough, relentlessly engaged enough, energized enough to be able to stand up and do the work. It's not about pampering yourself. Obviously, look after your health. Obviously, do your exercises. Obviously. But realize something much more important is trying to happen, which is that God is calling for the training of the special forces of evolution, the warrior midwives. And this second kind of service is about undergoing calmly and tenderly and simply the kind of spiritual training that will get you to the next level of force in your life. And there are 5 kinds of practice I have discovered, and you have them in my book, The Hope. And if you have the read version, you'll get this, but I'll just give you them gently, and you'll see how they all fix together to work on the whole of your being, because everything needs to be brought into alignment. So the first kind of practice that we all need more than oxygen is what I call the cool practices, which are practices of peace, of calming down, of really, really opening to the spacious shanti, the great peace that is the foundation of the divine nature. You won't be able to sustain any kind of real effort in our crazy world if you don't have equanimity, if you don't have deep, deep access to healing peace. So cool meditations are great. Walking meditations that stabilize you are great. Saying quietly the name of God is great. Anything that truly calms you down, chanting is great. Find the cool practice that works alchemically on you to stabilize you in any circumstance and make it the foundation of your new sacred activist house. But it's not only the cool practices that are needed, because you also need the hot practices. And hot practices are heart practices, passion practices, devotion practices, energy of devotion and passion practices. And so many of the new age are just totally chilled out by badly done cool practices and don't realize that the divine life also means having passion and also means having wildness and beautiful flowing energy of passion and devotion. So you need in this time to work on the heart with the great Sufi heart practices, the great Christian heart practices, the great practice of saying the name of God with intense devotion. That can heat your heart up. And the reason why you need to is because you're going into a dark night, and every day will be filled with chaos and death and pain. And there will be times when you'll feel your heart so shattered, so battered, that you'll feel you won't be able to take another breath, and your compassion fatigue will be boundless, and you'll want to. My alternative personality is a drunk in a white suit swinging from a vodka bottle in Ipanema Beach. You want to get the hell out of all of this and just give up, and that's not a response. So you need something that will keep your heart juicy and alive and vibrant, and those are the great heart practices, the sacred heart practice in Christianity, the practice of remembrance in Sufism, the crying of the name of God out, Allah, Allah, Shiva, Shiva, dance, right? You need that. The third practice that we all deeply need is prayer practice, because prayer has immense power to reinvigorate you and to align you with the field, but also prayer on the invisible levels has enormous power to help. And if you haven't found that out yet, it's because you haven't prayed deeply enough. And the other reason why prayer is so important is that there will come times, and you probably have been through those in this last year, where you'll be too shaken up to do the cool practices, and your heart will be too much of a bloody mess to do the heart practices. You won't be cool enough to calm down, and you won't be focused enough in the heart because your heart will be just a bloody rag. But even then you can pray. That's what I discovered in my dark night, when I was incapable of meditating, although I'd been meditating for 20 years, and when I was incapable of doing the heart practices because my heart was just a raw, bloody, battered, shattered, pierced thing. Horrifying. But I could pray. I could pray the rosary. That's what I did. That's what I kept alive doing. I just said the rosary day after 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 day, day after day. I don't mean just occasionally. I was saying it all the time like a drowning man gasping for oxygen. And I discovered something about prayer that I shall never forget, which is that prayer can build your strength in the most miraculous way to face anything. And during that period, I thought a lot about Jesus for obvious reasons. And I thought a lot about the prayer that he was praying when his mind was shattered and his heart was absolutely broken in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he'd been abandoned by everybody and was facing the crucifixion, or a death so unspeakably ghastly you cannot imagine if you know the real details, which I won't impose on you because you're nice people and it's the afternoon. It's unspeakably obscene what they did, and he knew he was going there. And he was in Gethsemane and he was weeping tears of blood. And then he gave the prayer that I also used, and it's an amazing prayer and it'll get you through anything. And it's simply, not my will, but your will. I'm in your hands now. You do it. Not my will, but your will. Find a prayer you can cling to at the end of any night and start saying it and making it yours. It will see you through unbelievable madness. The fourth kind of practice is shadow work. You have to get down with your own darkness and your own collusion with this mad system and with the darkness that's out there. God is not bipolar. The one works with both what we call good and what we call evil to do its own mysterious alchemy. This is known by all the serious mystical systems, and it was known by Jesus, it was known by the prophet, it's known by the Buddha, it's known by everyone. So get with the program. And that means is that we have to face the darkness in ourselves and work with it and realize that as long as we are unconscious of it, it's going to rule us and keep this lethal madness going. And the fifth kind of practice, and this I think will delight you, and I really beg you to do this, is to do physical, sacred work, to choose to do yoga, even if you do it as badly as I do, or to do it sacred dance, which I do with more enthusiasm, but no more skill, do something that and I'm joining the gym 3 days ago, and I have this Pakistani trainer who's 24 years old and who treats me like God, and she's so sweet, and I do these pathetic things and he makes me feel like Superman. So I am putting my, yes, so wait a second, you won't wait till you see me next time. I told him that what I wanted from my training. He said, what do you want from your training? And I said, I want Brad Pitt's body in Troy, at which moment we all fell about howling with laughter. So there is this, come into your bodies and celebrate the beauty and power of your body by undertaking a sacred discipline in the body, and bring those 5 practices together in your life and have them available to you so you can be an alchemist of your connection to the divine. When you're feeling dreary, do a heart practice. When you're feeling over neurotic and totally shattered, do a cool practice. When you can't do either, do a prayer. Always be looking at your shadow and keep your body moving with joy. And you'll find that you'll come increasingly into your unified power. So that's the second service. The third form of service, in the name of the one, is to the entire creation and to every sentient being, all human beings, whatever their religion or lack of religion, gay, straight, trans, it doesn't matter a hill of beans. Those are only names. What do you think? Everyone is sacred, and everyone is worthy of your respect and being treated with dignity. And that you turn up with in that. That is the most important thing that you can do, to treat everyone in your life as holy, with courtesy and nobility, and go that extra mile of sometimes painful kindness and consideration. But in that third service, there's something very important for everyone now, and that is we have to step up and acknowledge the sacredness and holiness of animals. Because what we're doing is creating a worldwide Auschwitz in which we're torturing multiple animal species to death. And this is building up for us a huge tsunami of black karma, because they are the mother's children just as much as we are. Do you think a whale is any less grand and majestic than we are, or a dolphin or a cat or a dog? They're all sacred. The world of the mother is an egalitarian world. And we have to stop the killing. So we have to stand up for the animals. The fourth kind of service is getting real about this very important kind of truth. And that is that we're meant to think globally, to have this vision of the dark night and of the birth and of the birth of a new species and all of that. Those are very important because they give us inspiration. But we have to act locally. We have to act in our communities, with our resources, with our friends, with people around us, and address the real pain that is now on the real streets of our real villages or cities or towns or countryside. It's outside you. You just have to walk out of the door to see people who need something. Don't ask me what to do. You could, if you just open your eyes and see what's going on. There are 1,000 opportunities a day to be of help if you've got just your human eyes open of compassion, right? The homeless people. There are people down the street who don't have a job and have got 3 children. And it goes on and on and on. All you have to do is to be a little less comfortable and start inquiring, and you'll find thousands of opportunities for helping all around you. Start doing them. And I want to give you a practice that will help you identify what it is that you're meant to turn up for your unique self. And this is the practice I've taught all over the world. So And it's helped a lot of people, and I hope that it will help you. Get up one early morning soon and sit in meditation. Surround yourself by the grace and protection of the divine, and dare to ask yourself one question. Dare to ask yourself, what of all the things that are exploding in this crazy world breaks my heart the most? And the first thing your ego will do will say, oh, I'm so engaged with so many things break my heart the most. I don't know what to choose. I just don't know what to choose. I can't make my mind up. I'm such a good person and I'm so incredibly empathetic. I'm heartbroken by all this stuff. Well, that's the ego talking, because if you press yourself, you'll find something that you can hardly bear to think about, because just thinking about it makes you feel so lacerated. And that's the thing you care about the most. That's how you identify it. And I learned this myself, because one day I'd been thinking about what is it that I truly am most involved in. And as you can imagine, a lot of stuff. I care passionately about feminism. I care passionately about gay rights. I care passionately about the environment. It goes on and on. But what does Andrew really, what is he heartbroken about that he can't stand even bearing to think about hardly? And I was in Starbucks in the early morning at 5:30, and I opened a paper, and there was the usual list of atrocities, you know. And then I turned the paper, and there was a column about 5 young guys who had tortured a heifer before she was electrocuted in an abattoir. And I started to vomit. And I was so angry and so heartbroken, both for the boys and for the heifer that was strapped to one of those appalling and about to be killed in that disgusting way. And I realized at that moment that what broke my heart the most is what we're doing to animals. And at that moment, I decided my private sacred activism would be becoming an advocate to animals and supporting animal sanctuaries and doing all the things that I've been doing ever since, and writing the book that I wrote with Carolyn on animals, saving animals from ourselves, that I would never, ever stop begging people to stop torturing our animals, because I live with the cat who saves my life every day by her sweetness and her wisdom and her brilliance. My Dalai Lama cat, my great teacher. So now, through the grace of God, I'm beginning to understand what animals really are. But what breaks your heart? What breaks your heart? What can you hardly bear to think about? What really you'd rather do anything than think about? Is it children being raped and trafficked? Is it women being beaten? Is it trans people? Is it old people being so alone and for so long and not tended to? What the hell is it? You know it's inside you. Have the courage to find it out, and then have the courage to identify it and to realize that if you do something about something that really matters that much to you, you'll never stop wanting to do it, because you'll never be at the end of your task. There will always be one more animal species to stand up for. There'll always be one more person to try to help. Find it out. And you'll find that from that following of your heartbreak, you'll also discover enormous passion to keep at it. There's never a day, however exhausted I am, if somebody rings me and says, we want you to speak for 20 minutes about animals, I go and take a chug of black coffee and I am back, because nothing, as long as I live, I will be crying out against what we're doing. Find out what makes you cry out like that and start doing it. And the other piece of advice that I'd love to give to you is, don't think you have to do all of this on your own. That's the old paradigm. What we need to do is to create what I call networks of grace, groups of about 6 or 7 people in your community that you love, who you know are good people like yourselves who really want to do something, and just meet together to stoke each other's enthusiasm and to pray together and to love each other up and to hold each other accountable, to really say, what are you going to do? I'll help you. I'll sustain you. I'll ring you on Thursday and say, how's it going? Networks of grace have been begun all over the world. And a lot of people have written to me and said, thank God, now I have a group that I can turn to, that we can ring each other. During this time in COVID, our network of grace in Oak Park, which consists of 4 people, we have been ringing each other every single day, keeping tabs on each other, stoking each other's creativity, ranting against the Republicans, obviously, and also really, really, really helping each other stay vibrant. And the result is that we've all done far, far more wisely, far more energetically than we would have done if we'd been on our own dealing with all of this. So build that community as soon as you can. And the 5th service is quite honestly this. Realize that every decision you make, every thought you have, every emotion you have, every investment you put down, every vote you do now has more significance than at any other time in human history. So you have to really get truly, truly conscientious. And everything that you do, from the smallest to the largest, ask yourself one question. Is this contributing to the birth of a new way of being and doing everything? Or is it just the same old, same old? Am I doing this out of fear, or am I doing this out of passionate love of a new reality? And you discover that's a very uncomfortable question, because it will really compel you to look at all of the decisions you make, economic, political, social, sexual, and really scrutinize them and see, do they truly help build a new reality? Or are they just compulsions born out of scarcity and separation and fear and lack? Nobody can make those decisions for you. You have to put yourself through that radiant ringer as a way of becoming more and more authentic. And if you bring together those 5 forms of service, the service to the divine, with the service to yourself, the training, with the service to all sentient beings, with the actual claiming of your real mission born out of your real most radical heartbreak, with groups of people to support you in that mission, with a true, deep, sacred attention to all the choices that you make, then you will come into your authentic, sacred activism and start being a warrior and a midwife of this new world. So my darlings, please, before the fat lady sings in such a way that everybody gets deaf and the world dies, please, please step up. Realize the time is now. We're not going to have a second chance for this. If we don't step up in our dignity and our passion now, the world will end and humanity will be destroyed. That's where we are. And it's terrifying. But to those who really see it, it is also thrilling, because it gives you and I an incredible opportunity to grow up, get down, and get going. So, my darlings, I'm just going to have a glass of water and then I will come back. But it was such a joy to share that with you, because I feel from your questions that are so serious that I have some amazing people here. And I just want to pour some burning golden wine into your glass so you can drink it and become far naughtier and more mischievous than you've ever thought yourself capable of. Radiant nuclear mischief makers. Don't be stuffed by the New Age bullshit, and don't be pacified by fear. Claim your magnificence. Step up. Radiate. And it's the time of the women. Ah, look at the glorious women already coming on stage. Look at these fantastic African-American women. Look at Stacey Abrams. Look at Isabel Watson, who's written a stupendous book on racism. Look at Kamala Harris. Look at these astonishing, fierce, noble, grand, courageous women who make the men look like wimps. Be one of them. I think some of you already are, actually. Excuse me.
I feel like we are so blessed to have had this remarkable time with Andrew. And of course, it's all been recorded, and I'll send the recordings out to all of you tomorrow or the next day at the latest. I know that for myself, I've made the dedication. I want to watch, especially the second half, this second, over and over and over and over. I kept telling my mind, you don't need to hear anything else from anyone else. You know, it's like the transmission that's come through Andrew today, for me, is so clear, so incredible. And you guys know me, I host 3 shows every weekend, and I get to meet amazing, remarkable human beings, and we'll continue to do that. And I'm planning all the shows for the next 3 months. But in terms of direction, we've just heard everything we need to know. We've heard everything. At least this is how I'm experiencing it. It's like everything we really need to hear in terms of what's happening and what we can do in embodying love in action, embodying being walking hope, we've heard today. And incredibly blessed we are. Incredibly blessed we are. And thank all of you for being here. And may you all find your own unique way to distill and digest this feast of wisdom, this feast from Andrew. May we all digest it, distill it, and then use it to absolutely inspire us to be everything we possibly can be.
Yes. Of course, and don't worry, don't think you get out of it if you're over 65. I'm 68. I'm just getting going. Jane Goodall is 83. The Dalai Lama is 85. You just have to take a nap in the afternoon. That's all.
Yes, exactly.
And then you get up there, and the great thing about being older is that you've got so much less to lose. I've lost the whole damn thing, so what do I care? Freedom's just another name for nothing left to lose, and you ain't got nothing if you ain't free. What are you waiting for, my darlings? Alexandra's already cooking like a wild one, so she doesn't need that. That's just something that she can inject into her system to give her even more energy. We can do, and Joyce, you've got it too, my darling. You've got it. Don't worry about them. They love them, help them, be a flame for them, so that they can catch. It's very contagious, real integrity, real passion. It's contagious. The dullest people could catch flame and surprise you. They may be stuck in all kinds of craziness now, but it's going to get so frightening. And they're going to need you saying, we've been scared out of our skulls, but we didn't allow it to paralyze us. It got us going. Come and join us. Come to the feast. Come to the party. Have a wild, beautiful life instead of a life paralyzed with fear, sitting counting your investments in Liechtenstein. You can't take it with you, and it's going to crumble anyway soon. So
definitely needed this more than you know.
oh, we all need it, darling. I need it. Don't think I don't teach myself when I teach like this.
Oh, I hear you saying.
Yeah, teachers always teach what they most need to be aligned with also. I'm not representing I learn this every day. I do these practices to keep myself, not to fail myself. The Buddha took 2 months off every year. He couldn't have been the Buddha without doing that. He went into retreat to stoke Buddhism, and then he went out and gave it all away. Once I met Mother Teresa in the 1980s, she was amazing. And she said, I asked her, how the hell do you do it? Because I was in my 30s, I could ask these kinds of questions. And she said, first of all, I don't do it. I couldn't do it. And secondly, I get up in the early morning and I sit for an hour and a half before the host, and I adore the Christ. And that fills me up. And then I spend the day giving it all away, and I get completely exhausted by the end of the day. I flop into bed like a dead thing, and then I do the same thing the next day. And that's how I've lived the last 20 years. And my God, it's much more exciting to live like that than to go to bed and be restless because you haven't expended every bit of your heart force trying to do something wonderful for others and yourself. The Dalai Lama doesn't just become the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama gets up. I've been with him. He gets up at 4:30 every day and he does an hour and a half or 2 hours of practice. And then he can be the Dalai Lama. He looks pretty tired at 4:30. He has a cup of tea. He gets on he's got a machine. He's got whatever they are, the treadmill, which he's so funny in his pink pajamas on his treadmill. And then he does his practice, and then he's the Dalai Lama. So become Joyce, become Alexandra, the full Christ Joyce, Christ Alexandra, or whatever word you want. These words, what do they mean? But your divine self, you have to do the work. Look, you take the practices and you breathe in the power, and then you give the whole damn thing away. So you feel like a rag, and you do the same thing the next day.
So now I know I'm on the right path.
You are on the right path. You're definitely on the right path. Watch out, world. But that's how they do it. Jesus doesn't float about. Jesus went off into the mountains. Sometimes he'd had enough. Can you imagine what he had to put up with? And he'd go up and walk around in the mountains and pray to his Father and lie down in the streams. And then he'd come back and give it all again. You have no idea what power you have, no idea what energy will come to you if you really do the practices seriously. And they'll give you fearlessness. They'll make you wild. They'll make you free. They'll make you unafraid of what anybody thinks about you. If you could see the emails that I've had over the last 20 years, you're a fake, you're a fraud, you're crazy, you're mad, you're obscene, etc., etc., etc. I've got them all, and Carolyn Meese has hers, and Marianne has hers, and we all have ours. All the people who try to do something in this world have ours. And one day we're going to publish them all together. in our 80s. We're going to put them all together. You can't let, the dogs bark, but the caravan passes on.
Absolutely.
Don't worry about what people think. My father said something fabulous to me once as a kid. He said, don't worry what people think about you. They're much too self-absorbed to think about you for more than 2 or 3 seconds anyway. And they probably don't even know the color of your eyes. So don't worry what they're thinking. Worry about whether you're turning up in the fullness of your true self. That's your job.
This was just 100% confirmation, because there are times in my own evolution that sometimes, because of my old programming, I have like, am I crazy? Like, do I really have this connection? Am I imagining it?
You do.
No, but but yeah, I'm awakening to that. And it's been very traumatic throughout everything.
Right.
So I'm learning how to keep my emotions balanced with all the trauma around me, which is always frequent and always on.
But you need the cool practices. You see, a personality like yours, which is much closer, it's like mine. I have enormous energy and passion, but I've had to work very hard on the cool practices to ground myself and to survive my heart. And that's not most people's problem, but because most people are so chilled out that they need to do the hot practices like crazy to get themselves going a bit. They think, they're sitting there sipping their Chardonnay and, oh, Antarctica's melting. Oh, that's interesting. And the current is driving. Oh, that's interesting. And the elephants are going. That's sad. And the kids are being slaughtered in the streets of Myanmar. Oh, what a shame. Get real. They need to be a lot more heated up because they've been so shut down by a very, very brutal, cruel, stupid, conscienceless culture and an equally stupid spiritual world.
Absolutely.
That isn't listening.
I want to just check in with you to be respectful of your time.
Yes, of course.
It's 4 minutes till 3 o'clock. We have people raising their hands.
Oh, yes.
I want to get in touch with because so tell us how do you want to wrap up in 4 minutes? Do you want to take a couple more questions?
I'd love to take one question from the heart of the heart of the heart.
Well, Joyce had her hand up first. So Joyce would be the winner.
Joyce, you've won the lottery, darling. I've won the lottery.
I can't. Oh, hang on. Am I unmuted? Yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so I know that the plan is going to go forward the way it is, but my question is that I personally feel that intuitively, it's not a good idea to take those vaccines with the genetically engineered elements. And I'm watching as everyone around me is getting it, and there's no long-term studies. And I'm so worried for all my friends and for people, that I feel scared that everyone will have some weird thing happen later. And how can I try not to tell people what to do, because I'm not trying to do that at all. But I say, maybe it's a good idea to wait a little bit or to see what happens. What do you feel?
Well, actually, it's very interesting you say that, because I'm in touch with the major people in the field, because my best friend from many, many years, since I found him in bed with my roommate, actually, he's now one of the world's leading epidemiologists. He's the Desmond Tutu professor at Johns Hopkins, and he did pioneering work with AIDS, and he knows Fauci, and he's talking to the Biden group. And I've posed this question to him, and he says there's always a risk, but as far as these very level-headed, sober-minded scientists know, it's a very small risk. The much greater risk is not getting it at this moment, when the virus, especially now, when the wholly new and very dangerous and very explosive variants are coming in. So put yourself, I would definitely advise you to get the two, and not worry too much. Nothing is perfect, but they've done enormous amount of research on the different possibilities of it. And from everything that they know, it is effective. And he is not he doesn't buy the party line. He has looked at it from every conceivable angle. And that's what he's advising me, and that's what he's advising the government.
And I wanted to just say that, oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that I've been, searching for things to do to enhance my life. And I'm writing poetry every week, which I wasn't doing before the pandemic. And I'm doing breath work and tapping, yoga, therapy, and
but
all kinds of wonderful things.
Something for someone else, isn't it?
It's what?
You're doing a lot for yourself, but what are you doing for others?
Oh, I do a lot of activism. I can't be out in the street myself right now.
No.
But I do a lot of activism online, and I'm always sharing independent media coverage of Black Lives Matter in Seattle, Portland, Kentucky, New York, Washington, D.C. I'm on it every day, and I share it on several pages, and I'm relentless.
That's great.
And also, the group that, the people that are against factory farms that are sitting in at all the pig farms, the cow farms, the slaughterhouses, the processing plants. I don't know what else to do.
No, you're doing great. I just wanted to know that. That's fabulous and very inspiring. Thanks. You're turning up. That's fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I just want to add that I was in a conversation with Andrew planning this event maybe a month ago, and he basically said the same thing about the vaccine. And I'd been wondering, because I have all the people sending me all the research that, it's going to terrible, I'm going to turn into a frog and don't do it. And then I have all the, the other side. And I really trust Andrew's advice. And when he shared with me that he actually knows someone who really isn't just, on the outside, but someone who really knows, I got okay, there's your answer. So that, a man that you respect tremendously is telling you it's a good idea. And my body relaxed and I felt good. And on Thursday, I got the Johnson & Johnson single shot. And right after I got it, my body just said, yes, this was a good choice.
This is great, Scott.
Yeah, so I just want to report that. That's my experience, and I've never gotten a flu shot in my life. I'm not someone who is vaccine oriented in my way of thinking, but the combination of what you said, Andrew, and tuning in, it's been a yes, I got it. And I had symptoms the next day. I had a little fever, a little achy. It was uncomfortable for a day.
COVID, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm so glad I did it. So for what it's worth. And thank you, Andrew, for giving me that little
my pleasure.
Yeah. And I will send you
Chris on. I'll give you Chris's. I think I gave you Chris's number.
You did. Yeah.
Get him on to talk to everybody because he's one of the world's leading experts on these things. He did heroic work in AIDS. His first lover died of AIDS. So this is a man of the greatest imaginable intellectual and moral qualities. Astounding.
What's his name?
Chris Beyrer, Beyrer. If you look him up, he wrote a great book on his whole work in AIDS. He was a real pioneer for AIDS. He actually opened up the first AIDS clinics in Burma and Kazakhstan, all over the world. And he was number 2 in the choice for the UN head of the World Health Organization. I mean, he's a very, very big deal. He's also a practicing Buddhist of great intensity and acclaim. I mean, he's a fantastic man. He's one of the most amazing. He's a great sacred activist.
We want to have him on the next story show.
Absolutely. If you look on my website, you'll see 2 interviews that I've done with him.
Okay.
And there's one where he gives the mantra of Tara, of protection from epidemics, which the Dalai Lama has got all the major monasteries chanting to protect the world. So you'll find that that mantra there to protect you. And he's absolutely clear about what's going on. Yeah,
And the Dalai Lama, is he vaccinated? Did he get the
absolutely.
vaccine?
Of course he is. Yeah.
The Dalai Lama, yeah.
So a reminder, as Andrew was talking about his website, it's his name.net, andrewharvey.net. There's a lot there. He's got his book. He's got amazing talks. Of course, we're going to all get a copy of this incredible recording of today. I feel so blessed that we've had such intimate time with him. But again, there's a lot of wonderful opportunities by going to andrewharvey.net. And Andrew, somebody did point out that your book by itself is not available here. Do you want us to order it through Amazon, or is there?
Yes, you order it through Amazon. Absolutely, yes.
Okay, great.
It's very available there.
Okay.
And the other thing that I would love is that I would love it if these two transmissions were given as a free gift to the whole Peace Tribe.
Wow.
I would like just to give them to everybody as a gift from me. And I would love it if we could include your questions. If anybody feels embarrassed about any of the questions, your questions were great and your participation was so vibrant. So if anybody has any kind of objection, please say it now, or then we can actually release it like that, just as a gift to the peace community.
Well, that's unbelievable. I was actually going to talk to you and suggest that we package it and sell it because it's so valuable.
I think, you know what I'd really love to do it is to do
wherever that is, we could do it.
What I'd love to do is to do it as a free gift, but I'd love to do it I have a great friend who runs an animal sanctuary, and to raise some money for that. And if people loved it, they'd no obligation, but they could then send money to the animal sanctuary. So let's do something free as a free gift to everybody who wants it. And if they're inspired by it, then ask them to, if they wouldn't mind helping the animal sanctuary. But I really feel, because of you and because of your group and because of the wonderful people here today, that I was able to do my best in a way that could really be of some use to people. So
It was
that
an
would be
incredible
wonderful for me.
transition, an absolute incredible transition. Is that the Moondog Sanctuary?
Yes.
And, you know, ironically, last night,
That's my dream. That's what I love to devote myself to. Yeah.
last night, Saturday Night Live was dedicated to animals. And
Right.
We sponsored Gentle Barn was the topic that we sponsored, and LA was amazing. And we had many people speaking about different animals. I'll send you the link.
I would love that. I love that.
Loving animals, you will love last night's show.
Oh, I'd love that. But let's talk about this. Let's do something really wild and
really special, because this was, like I was saying to people, everything we need to hear is here. Everything's here. You were
it's a kind of concentrated care package for people.
Absolutely.
And I'd love to give it as a gift and love it to actually help the animals, because, you know, I'll be taken care of, and I'll die in a ditch, but it won't matter. I'll have a bit of bread in my hand, so who cares? But I think this would be a wonderful way of getting this message out to people. They don't, you know, they don't have to pack. We can do other things which we package, but this be a gift from the heart to the heart. That would be my deepest desire.
Well, I'm going to go to gallery view, and so
gallery view, yes.
So, you know, and that's incredibly generous. Incredibly generous.
Not at all. My pleasure.
And I want to encourage maybe people who haven't turned the cameras on, if you want to turn your cameras on so we can see you one final time. And those of you who have had your cameras on, those of you who joined us, thank you so much.
If you want to find out how to create a network of grace, there's In the Hope. If you sign up in my website, you get a free reading of the Hope. And the last chapter, second to last chapter, is on how to start a network of grace. So everything is there except for the recipe for celery soup, which I don't know.
God bless you, Andy.
I love you. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you. Take great care of yourself. Bye bye,
What a
darling.
gift. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make mischief now. Have